Welcome back, everyone. Today I'm going to be ranking the films of Ridley Scott. I recently ranked the films of Martin Scorsese, and that video did very well. So thank you guys for watching that. If you guys like this video today, please like and subscribe. It helps boost this channel in the algorithm. With that all out of the way, let's get into Ridley Scott's filmography. Now, he's made a lot of films. I think he's made 27 feature films. I've only seen 20 of them. So I'm only going to rank the films that I've seen. So starting out at number 20, I have G.I. Jane. This isn't a bad film by any means. It's just one of the weaker films in Ridley Scott's filmography. I'm actually really excited to see what they do with the sequel, G.I. Jane 2. I don't know if Ridley Scott's directing that, but I'm excited to see what Jada Pinkett Smith does with the role. At 19, I have The Counselor. Michael Fassbender's in this. That's about all I remember. I saw this when it came out, so it was about 10 years ago now. And yeah, just not a very memorable film. At 18, I have Exodus, Gods and Kings. I don't know why this film was made when we have The Prince of Egypt, a perfectly good Exodus story that will never be topped, I think. And it just feels like when Aronofsky went out and made Noah out of nowhere, like, oh, here's a Noah's Ark movie. It's like, okay. Both of them, both Noah and Exodus, Gods and Kings, aren't really that memorable to me. So I have Exodus low on my list. At 17, I have Body of Lies. Now, when I saw this film, it was about 15 years ago. I haven't gone to rewatch it since because it's just not very memorable to me. But at the time, I was a big fan of Leonardo DiCaprio and Russell Crowe. They were probably my two favorite actors. So seeing that there was any movie with both of them in it, I just wanted to see it. And I can't tell you anything that happens in this film. I completely forgot about it. So that's at 17. At 16, another not great movie. House of Gucci. I dreaded watching this. It was way too long for one, and nothing happens. There's no plot. There's no story. It doesn't go anywhere. It's just scenes of stuff happening. If it weren't for the Italian aesthetic, like the high fashion aesthetic, and Lady Gaga carrying the film, I probably would have this at the bottom of my list. But at number 15, I have Robin Hood. Yeah, if this was titled anything but Robin Hood, it would probably be a pretty good film, but it just lacks the soul of what a Robin Hood film should be. If you guys have seen the animated one or Men in Tights, that has like a spirit and a feel to it. It's like a heroic tale of Robin Hood, whereas with this one, with Russell Crowe, just I don't know what he was going for, trying to make Robin Hood like a realistic character, but yeah, it just kind of fell flat. At 14, I have Alien Covenant. Now, this film also sucks, and it should be lower, but it has aliens in it, so it's going to be higher on the list. Alien Covenant, I just think, is like maybe the weakest film in the Alien series. All the Alien films kind of just start out super high and then slowly go down. They just kind of degrade with quality, it seems. And Covenant is just a mess. Besides there being some cool scenes with aliens, I can't really tell you much about this film. Plot-wise, I don't remember what happened in the film. I do remember a little bit of what happened in the next film that I have on this list, though. At number 13, I have another alien film, Prometheus. I really liked the philosophy they were kind of going for in this. They had like some cool concepts they were trying to work in, but at the end of the day, it fell a little bit flat. I really like Michael Fassbender in this, and I thought that it created a cool backstory for the aliens that kind of worked. The movie is just not very entertaining, in my opinion. At number 12, I have Hannibal. This film probably should be lower. It's probably the weakest out of the Hannibal films. But that end scene with Ray Liotta, I don't know. It just still creeps me out to this day. That's never going to leave my head. And I'm the biggest Anthony Hopkins fan of like all time. So anything he's in is going to be a little bit higher on my list just because he's so captivating when he's on screen. I do like Red Dragon and Hannibal. I feel like they're good, follow-ups to Silence of the Lambs, but they're not even close to the original film. Silence of the Lambs is just like an S tier movie in building suspense, and Hannibal and Red Dragon kind of fail to build that suspense. They just kind of give you shocking imagery. And I'm somebody who's a big Harris fan. I actually like Red Dragon more than the book Silence of the Lambs, so. But anyways, Red Dragon's not even directed by Ridley Scott. But those three films kind of go together. So Hannibal at 12. At number 11, this is when we get into like the really good films, the high quality films by Ridley Scott. 11, I have a film that a lot of people would probably put a little bit higher, but it's just not my type of movie. Last time I saw it was with my mom, actually, so I do have fond memories watching it for the first time, but it's Thelma and Louise. Really fun film. Susan Sarandon's amazing in it. It's an awesome date night movie. It's fun. It's well put together. It's got a great script. I really don't have any bad things to say about Thelma and Louise other than just like it's not really my cup of tea. But Thelma and Louise at 11. At number 10, this can be controversial because it shouldn't be above Thelma and Louise, but I truly believe when the full film comes out, when we get the director's cut, it's going to be one of my favorite films because I already like it a lot. So when that full version comes out, I know I'm going to love it, and that's Napoleon. This is a recent film. It's getting a lot of hate because that people felt like they went into the Josephine story too much. As somebody who's read like a ton of books on Napoleon, that is a pretty key part of his life, and I think that it was well balanced. You could certainly like nitpick the books that you read. You can read just about the Peninsula Wars or read just about Waterloo. It's like 100 books just on Waterloo. But when you look at the whole life of Napoleon, you need the Josephine parts in there, and I thought like the film definitely felt unfinished, and when we get the 4-hour version, I feel like it's going to be here on my list if not higher. So I'm also just a big Napoleon fan, so that's why it's a bit high. But next up I have The Last Duel. This is a really underrated film. This came out a couple years ago, and I really liked the way he told the story, having one person's account, the next person's account, the last person's account, and then the final duel at the end. And let me just say, without spoiling it, the duel is amazing. It's one of the most accurate medieval duels I've ever seen in a film, probably the most. And while people can nitpick Ridley Scott's films all day for being historically inaccurate, he is pretty good at portraying what it was actually like and putting us in that world. And I kind of hate when people nitpick the history, and I'm like the biggest history buff, and I see all the flaws, but when you're like nitpicking it, you're kind of just pulling the film apart for no reason. These films, like the historical epics, and Ridley Scott's kind of the goat of historical epics, but these films get people into history, and that's the important part. The best thing about Napoleon is not that it's historically accurate, it's that it gets more people to go and read about Napoleon, right? So The Last Duel is similar, and I thought the acting performances by everybody was just absolutely terrific. I mean, Matt Damon in this is awesome. Adam Driver in this is amazing. Ben Affleck. So at number 8, I have, these next 8 I think are like solidified top 1,000 movies ever made. That might seem like a lot, saying that they're definitely top 1,000 movies, but I actually struggle to make a top 1,000 movies list. And yes, I have tried many times. I've been trying for the last couple months to make like a solidified list, because I want to do a top 1,000 movies video eventually. It'll probably be broken up into like 80 parts, but I've never seen another creator do that on YouTube. So I'm working on that list right now, and it's tough to make that list. And I feel like all these films are like definitely in the 1,000 movies you should watch before you die. At number 8, I have The Duelist. So honestly, Thelma and Louise would be in that list too, but The Duelist at number 8. This is a little bit high, maybe. I don't think so, because it's his first film and it's so well shot. It's some of the best cinematography in any of his films. It is heavily influenced by Barry Lyndon, but this came out in 1977, so it came out a couple years after Barry Lyndon, and it's just so beautifully shot, and it tells this amazing story that you should go look into if you've never read about it, about these two French soldiers who were dueling back and forth for like 20 years. They had a ton of different duels, and they had like kind of a gentleman's agreement to meet up whenever their armies were like close or whatever, and then they would duel each other with swords. And this was very common in the Napoleonic armies. They had to ban dueling because so many French soldiers were doing it. But as somebody who fenced for a couple years, I have this film higher on my list because the sword fight scenes are just awesome. They're very well done. At number 7, I have The Martian. Now, this film probably should be higher if it weren't for, 1, Ridley Scott having such a strong filmography, and 2, for Interstellar coming out a year before. I think a little bit less than a year before. Interstellar is just slightly better as a space film, and I feel like that was on a lot of people's minds when they went into The Martian. And when you come out of The Martian and you don't get as deep as a philosophical message as you do with Interstellar, it can fall a little bit flat. But as far as like adventure films go, especially in space, I think it's hard to beat The Martian. I think it's hard to beat Matt Damon's acting in this. This might be his best acting performance ever. And I found this film to just be incredibly exciting and thrilling all the way through. And I actually want to go back and watch it soon because I haven't rewatched it since I originally saw it in theaters. But I loved The Martian when I first saw it, and that's at my number 7. At number 6, I have a lot of people's number 1 for Ridley Scott, but it's American Gangster. The only reason why Gangster is not in like the top 3 is because there's better Denzel performances in my mind. I know this is still like a top end Denzel performance, and for some people it might be their favorite. But for me, there's a couple performances by him I like a little bit better. And not to say that that's the entirety of the film, but it is the bulk of the film is Denzel's acting. The rest of the story is a little bit drawn out. It's not the most exciting Ridley Scott film when you compare it to things that are a little bit higher. So for that reason, I have American Gangster at 6. At number 5, I have Black Hawk Down. One of my favorite war films of all time. I think it's one of the greatest war films ever made. The Black Hawk going down sequence is one of the most thrilling sequences ever put to film. The ending is heartbreaking. There's so many actors that not got their start, but got like they had a smaller role in this film that really put them on the radar of other directors. Guys like Tom Hardy, Ewan McGregor kind of play smaller roles in this, which is cool. And yeah, I think Black Hawk Down is just a terrific film and probably the most exhilarating war film, maybe second to Saving Private Ryan. So Black Hawk Down, number 5. At number 4, I have Kingdom of Heaven. Now, Kingdom of Heaven's a little bit high, but I always watch the director's or the extended cut, and I feel like that adds a lot to the film. It adds little bits of story, little bits of just backstory that I think is necessary for filling out the characters. And when you watch the extended cut, I feel like it's one of the best historical epics ever made. Definitely the best film we've ever gotten about the Crusades. I think it's Eva Green's and Orlando Bloom's arguably their best performances they've ever had. I think it portrays Baldwin IV in a sick way, even though he probably didn't wear a mask quite as cool as that in real life. It does make Baldwin IV look really cool, and it gets people to go research about him because he had one of the most spectacular lives of anybody who's ever lived. And I just love Kingdom of Heaven for the battle sequences and just the whole Crusader vibe. So I got Kingdom of Heaven number 4. At number 3, I have the slightly better historical epic Gladiator. Now, I'm going to do a full analysis on this film soon, and writing it is already not a challenge, but it's been a lot of fun because this film is incredibly deep. I rewatched it recently, about a month ago, and I never realized how deep this film is philosophically. For years, I just kind of saw it as like a really fun adventure film, but yeah, this is a deep film, and it's fun. It's entertaining in every way. Russell Crowe, arguably his best performance. I think A Beautiful Mind and Gladiator are kind of the top 2 for me, and yeah, just an awesome movie. Could easily be my number 1. It's just, for me, as much as I love history, there's one genre I like just slightly more, and that's sci-fi. And at number 2, I have not only one of the best sci-fi films of all time, but arguably the best horror film ever made. Now, in my opinion, the best horror film ever made is always going to be The Shining. But you could take your pick. You can say The Thing, you can say The Exorcist, or you can say Alien, and all answers would be correct, because Alien builds tension and suspense like no other film. And it's really a shame that James Cameron decided to absolutely butcher that in Aliens. I know some people like the sequel better, but there's just too many aliens, too many guns. It's too loud for me personally. It's still a great film, but for me, the first Alien is just like leagues above all the other films that have come out in the franchise. And it's, one of the most badass female leads ever. Ripley is, on the level of Sarah Connor for her badassery. And yeah, I just love Sigourney Weaver in this. I love the design of the alien. I could probably talk about that for like an hour, just how well designed that creature was. Probably the coolest creature we've ever seen in film history, I would argue. So Alien at number 2. At number 1, I have another sci-fi film by Ridley Scott, the only one that I think's better, and to me is the deepest film Ridley Scott's ever made, even deeper than Gladiator, and it's Blade Runner. Blade Runner for me is just, it just hits home. I don't know what it is about it. Harrison Ford is so cool in it. He might be the first literally me character ever. So cool. The vibes in it are awesome. The sense of scale Ridley Scott builds, especially for this coming out in 1982, how he builds the scale of the city is insane. Really impressive stuff. And then he works in like a deep philosophy too. And I do recommend you watch the director's cut. You know, watch the full final cut. Don't watch the theatrical version. Not that the theatrical version's bad. It just cuts some things out that really Scott really wanted to be in there. So make sure you watch the director's cut or the final cut. I forget which one. But yeah, another thing that puts Blade Runner over all the other films on this list, I think the thing that gives it to the edge, because really the top 3, you can mix them up and I wouldn't really care. It just depends on what I've seen most recently. But the thing that I think puts Blade Runner number 1 for me is the soundtrack. I've spent countless nights listening to Blade Runner Blues because it's just such a vibe, and I love that cyberpunk feel. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because I've read so many sci-fi books in my life, but Blade Runner just is the film for me. And I will say that Denis Villeneuve made a pretty formidable sequel. I think it's, I don't want to say it's better than the first one, but it's definitely at the same level, if not slightly better. But yeah, I'm just a big fan of Blade Runner. And I'm a big fan of all these Ridley Scott films. Everything from like Thelma, Louise, and up, I think I'm going to rewatch many, many, many times in my life. Everything from Hannibal down. I had fun watching, but I don't know how often I'll go back and revisit those films. But yeah, just a solid filmography from maybe, you know, I mean, some people could probably argue that he's the greatest filmmaker ever. I'd definitely put him in the top 10. I don't know about number 1 greatest, but as far as like historical epics and sci-fi, you can't really get better than Ridley Scott. And he's one of my favorite directors ever. And those are my rankings for his films. So let me know in the comments what I got wrong. What films did I put too high? What films did I put too low? How would you rank his films? What director should I do next? I'm thinking of doing Christopher Nolan next, and then I will work my way through kind of my favorite directors of all time. I'll definitely do Denis Villeneuve, probably do Cronenberg, definitely Lynch, Kurosawa. I probably need to watch a few more films. I've seen like 20 of his films, but he's got so many films in his filmography. But let me know in the comments who you guys want to see me rank next, and I will get to that because these have been a lot of fun. As always, you can check out these lists on my Letterboxd. I believe it's just Deep Thought PROD, like for productions, and you guys can check out all my lists. I got like 86 lists made on my Letterboxd, but that's how I've been doing these videos, of just going off of that. But yeah, that's everything for today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It always helps boost this channel in the algorithm. Thank you guys for watching as always. I'll catch you guys in the next one, and peace.